Okay, I'd like to call the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting of Wednesday, January 11th to order. And if we could all stand and say the pledge again. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Seeing nobody in the audience, I'm assuming there's no public delegations, so we will move on to approval of minutes for the regular meeting of December 14th.
Move to approve the East Lyme Board of Finance regular meeting minutes dated December 14, 2016.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, before we vote on that, I do have some comments on those meeting minutes. Okay. If we turn to the last page, page 6, the first sentence says, Mr. Weber asked Ms. Alberti if she had used other board and commission bylaws as a guide/benchmark for her draft. And the response was Ms. Alberti said that she had not. That's not entirely correct. I believe that at the last meeting, I specifically cited 3 references when I came up with the draft of the bylaws. So the first reference was the Board of Selectmen bylaws. The second was the bylaws for the town of Brookfield, Connecticut. And the third was the Connecticut General Statutes, Chapter 106. So those were the 3 references that I had made where I had pulled information from those documents to kind of pull together our draft for our board. So if I could have a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
So moved.
And a second.
Yeah,
Okay.
as amended.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain?
I abstain.
Okay. Moving on to reports from the First Selectman.
Good evening. Thank you all for attending this evening. Earlier tonight, we went to Willie B. Haynes and we heard the school renovation project. That needs to be highlighted more than well, I guess everything needs to be highlighted, right? But the school building project, renovation project, which is to renovate the 3 existing schools. Renovate and rejuvenate rather than rebuild new ones and renovate as new. Roughly $10 million each school, $34 million project. You heard all the details tonight. For the public's information, they're going to have 2 public forums, back and forth, presentation, and then fielding questions and concerns and suggestions. And that will be on January 17th. And January 19th. Both will be at 6 o'clock. Both will be in the high school auditorium. Both will have identical information, so no need to go to both of them. But if there's Tuesday versus Thursday, if one's better than another, we'll encourage all folks to come out from the public and hear about the school project. The paper's picking up on the story and giving good information out there. I know that the school website has great information out there as well about the school design and what they plan to do. The idea is, as we heard tonight, to renovate the 3 schools, to breathe life into them, and the major plant of the building to last another 20 plus years. Of course, within those 20 years, there's going to be ongoing maintenance concerns and updates and other items that we'll have to always consider. But I think this is they're doing a great job of communicating what the plan is to the public. And the thought is we're going to be seeing it come to the Board of Selectmen, I believe, in February, so very soon, and then to the Board of Finance very shortly thereafter, and then move to a referendum by mid-March. March 14th is the date circled right now, aiming for, and we want to do this now. We want to do this before the budget season really kicks in, because we'll also have this budget referendum coming. We don't want to mix the two. And also we want to do this in this fiscal year where the state still has some money that they're considering for school renovation projects, and some of this, as we have heard, will be reimbursable. That's what's going on in town. Of course, at the selectman office, we have department heads coming in and coming up with their budgets and defending them, and we go through the budget line items line by line in each department and try to find efficiencies and cost saving measures, but also come up with what it's going to cost to run this government for another year. The cold hard reality of it. I'll tell you, there's a lot of activity going on right now between CEOs and the newly elected, newly seated legislature. I was at a cost meeting today with legislators, CEOs, and of course the governor was there too to give his brief to the CEOs of the towns. And these are tough times. Period. As the governor said, and said it well, these are the cards we've been dealt. We live in a state where from 1935 to 1985, not one dime was put away for pensions for 50 years. Anytime someone retired, they just took it out of their right side pocket and gave them money. And that built up, and that built up, and that built up. And in the mid-'80s, they went, we should start putting some. But they never put enough money away, and we know that. Whereas, we as a town are funded properly, and most towns, cities and towns in this state, most towns are, some of the big cities aren't, for sure. The state is nowhere close to that. There's major budget problems up in the state, $1.5 billion staring at them. If they negotiated all the state contracts and renegotiated them and came up with the best scenario, they'd save $500 million. That's wonderful. That's our money, $500 million. $500 million. I said it right the first time. $500 million. That's $500 million. They're still $1 billion short. So all the great things they could do with the state union contracts is still $1 billion short. So and a lot of the state costs, 70% of the state costs are fixed costs. They can't say yes or no. It's a cost of doing business. Plowing roads, fixing roads and bridges, social services, mental health, etc. So the give is going to be municipal aid. So we're preparing. The municipalities heard that loud and clear. We've been seeing it. As you know, we got a hit a couple weeks ago. $125,000 came off the ECS funding that was due to this town, that was promised to this town by the state, that was committed by the state to give this town, and they cut that. Mm-hmm. They also cut LoCIP funding. Basically, they just ran out of money.
Wasn't the low chip 120? I think no. 120.
About $120,000 of what we were planning on spending got held up. It doesn't mean it won't be there next year. What they just basically said is the towns put in all their applications and we're out of money, so no more applications will be accepted. So that's what's going on there. We're preparing for the budget to come to Board of Selectmen the beginning of February, so just a couple more weeks. So we have a little bit of work to do there, and we know that a lot of the costs. A lot of the funding that's coming from the state, we can continue to talk about it. We should be prepared that we're not going to get that money. The pilot money will be cut. LoCIP money will be cut. Town Aid Road will be cut. ECS will be cut. And there's another one that I'm trying to remember. But those monies just aren't going to be there. So we have to be prepared as a town to be able to pay our own bill. And when it does come, it's great. And the state does owe us some. They do. They collect the taxes. They're supposed to distribute some of that wealth down to the towns. But more and more are going to the cities and less to the towns. And that's just the way it is. That's the way it is. You do your job. We're doing our job. We're going to keep this town going. And it's not as bleak Believe me, we're all. The person who spoke this morning was Facebook friend him, read him, ConnecticutMirror.org. I know some of us read that. His name is Keith Phaneuf, Phaneu. Yeah. And he's fabulous. Actually, quite bright, quite humorous, and quite on the spot. The legislatures call him to find out what's going on. Listen, it's doom and gloom, and on this token, we're going to get through it. We are going to get through it. One of the speakers talked about, you're either going to take your medicine or you're going to sit in the sick bay for 20 more years, or you're going to take your medicine, take your hit, and get better. We're going to get better.
Is there a watchdog agency or an auditing agency? I mean, I'm just thinking of this right now, that audits the state to see if, I don't know how this works, but how do we prevent, poor, what's his name? Governor Malloy. Right.
That guy.
Having a brain lapse, I'm sorry. But, he's got a hand of crappy cards. So what's to prevent,
Yes, he did.
So he's trying to pay for a lot of past sins. So how do we make sure that going forward, other areas of mismanagement don't happen? We get audited by outside people.
Yeah. They have a
do state
comptroller,
governments
and
do
I
that?
think the comptroller stays very separate from the executive branch and the legislative
Yeah.
branch, comptroller and the state treasurer. But and I'm sure they're audited and the money's right when it is that they fix that. But the decisions
Right.
get made by the state legislature and as a body, and
Yeah, but they don't have a financial
and that's.
background.
But
Well,
that's government, and
democracy.
that is a republic
We ain't
government,
have a-
and
you can be
I
a
know.
farmer,
And thankfully, at
you
the
can be a
town
knitter.
level, we're dealing with small budgets; they're easier to handle. But we have to eyeball each other, and politics doesn't play as much into it as just doing the next right thing. Town government works. That's all I can keep saying is, we don't run debt. We're not $1 billion something in the hole. We pay for our debts going forward, our commitments to our employees being the pension funds and all that. We get it done. And when we have to cut back, we do. Now the state, they're cutting back too.
The state has to balance their budget too. The only
Yeah.
one that doesn't is the federal government.
Yeah, right.
Right. So
gotta find
they're the state has 9% less employees than it did 6-7 years ago. So they are cutting back. It's just cumbersome. It's big. I just thank you for what you do. And for everybody involved in what we do in the town. This one, she's worth her weight in gold. She does a fabulous job, and there's a lot of people that care and watch every dollar that we spend here. Includes all the department heads too. I'm very thankful that we have the people that work for us. I can take any questions. I'm going to probably check out a little early. Anna can handle some of the appropriation stuff, the transfers that are coming. And I've been running pretty hard for a couple of days and not feeling very well. So I want to make sure I take care of that before it takes care of me.
A couple of short ones.
Yeah, please.
So as you develop your department budgets, you were saying last year that you'd like to propose that certain size budgets don't come with their budget heads when we do our budget reviews. Do you have some kind of size or some suggestions on which ones?
I wouldn't say size, but I'd say complexity.
Yeah.
When we're just talking about it, like I'll throw zoning. It's Bill Mulholland's salary. And he has fees that he collects, and there's some miscellaneous supplies, which is like paper and staples. You don't want to see them. You just don't. There's nothing there. I can give you a list of anything that'd be more complex than a couple department head, a couple employees, and if there's any program or if it gets any much more complicated than that, you should see them. You have every right to see every one of them, but you may want to really pare it down a little bit and dig in. That's what we do at the selectmen level. We don't see every one of them. We get to anything that's more complex than a department
Focus on the
head
complex ones, yeah.
and
Maybe when
miscellaneous
it gets closer,
expenses.
we can, as a board, through the chairman, discuss which ones that we should see and maybe
Yeah.
skip some as a board.
And then the
we decide. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so if you can propose a list, then we can
Yeah, let's
chew
do
on
that.
it.
Let's do that. It'd be easy to do.
And then the second half of that is the meeting we just came from. We said we didn't want to do fees for the town, or we might not want to. But there's clearly a cost associated with that. So do the department heads gonna carry that added cost into their budget, or are we gonna decide first whether or not we're gonna?
Yeah, I'm gonna want to sit down with Al and find out what his scope of work is. I'll have Joe sit in on that as
But you have
well.
building
And let's
inspectors,
just
and
talk
fire
about that.
inspectors. I mean, there's gotta be a lot of different
Yeah,
inspections.
well, right.
So that, one budget or the other, I think, has to carry that cost.
Yes.
Take it out of contingency.
Yeah, but I'm trying to keep that project as low as possible too. So I want to
It's gonna
keep our
happen.
operating budget low, but I don't want to start
But I
adding
mean,
a
it's
couple
real.
$100,000 more.
Yeah, it's gotta be one place or the other, though.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I know.
It's,
So we'll figure that out before
At
it
least
goes
reimburse
to
yourself.
the final vote before it comes to selectmen in here. So in the next week or two, I'm going to have to kind of come up with that.
At least you would reimburse yourself.
Yeah, but you can carry it in that bonding for 20 years, and it is a cost of doing that project.
Right.
And if it's an added burden to the operation, we have to either go out and hire some subcontractors to help Joe do his work.
Gotcha.
but do you wanna carry that for 30 years?
Dick Morris has plenty of people, and he can
Yeah.
expand hours, but it means expanding hours. So depends on how we want to do that.
Yeah.
It's over 2 years too, maybe even 3 fiscal years. So we might be able to just spread it out.
I would, yeah. I mean, that's where I would lean
Yeah.
towards, not trying to spread that over 30 years. If you can
Yeah.
spread it over 3, it might be a little
Yeah,
better.
we could probably just spread it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that it was covered in one
And
place.
again, we added the fees in only last year because we thought it was going to be renovate his new project, and if it was a $200 fee, well, the state's paying for 40% of that. So why not have the state pay for some of it, and we're paying ourselves back. So
Yeah.
good,
That's also good.
good.
One question on, excuse me,
Go ahead, Lisa.
on the fire study, where are we with that? When can we expect to see
Uh,
that?
Well, before we get to the fires, I just want to get to a few more numbers while we're on the subject of the
Okay,
numbers.
sure.
Okay. The $125,000 education cost sharing cut, is that going to fall on the Board of Education to find where that money's coming from?
We've asked them to look for savings in their budget. yes.
100%
Yeah.
on their budget, okay.
And we have costs on our side
Okay.
with LoSiP funding.
Right, so the LoSiP. Now, I read in that article in the paper where you were quoted that any municipality that started their LoSiP project that was a percentage complete would still get their funding. Have we
Right.
started any of our projects?
Yeah, I don't
So-
have a list for you tonight.
If you want, I can comment on that.
Yeah, sure, of course.
So, any projects that you have submitted to the state for approval and you have a project number 4, you can go ahead and do those projects. So, we have, replacing the generators at the 2 Niantic fire stations, doing a secure transaction window at the police department, the security cameras that we installed here at the town hall, and sealing various brick buildings. So all of those have been approved, and
Good.
so they're in various stages of progress. And after that, that's it for us for LoSiP projects at
Okay.
this point in time until they take off the freeze.
Okay, so what percentage of the $120,000 of LoSiP money does that represent? Like a good portion of it?
Oh, absolutely.
You got it all
Yeah.
in.
all
Okay,
numbers.
good. So
Yeah,
we're,
great.
so we're really not going to,
Well, but the way the
But it's
LoSiP
frozen.
program works is they give you
Incur.
your fiscal year allocation in March. So in March of 2017, we are not getting additional LoSiP funds that we would be able to use for, like, for example, the LoSiP funds that we would have received this fiscal year, we wanted to upgrade the town hall heating control system, pave various parking lots, well, actually, the town hall parking lot and the Niantic Fire at Grand Street. And then we also wanted to allocate some funds from that for some dam work that, various dams that we have in town.
right.
So those projects we're not gonna be able to do because
Mhm.
we hadn't submitted, we weren't able to submit for approved projects because we hadn't received this year's allocation.
And is it true that any LoSiP money that is left over from projects that have been completed, we don't get to roll over any further? That it has to be returned to the state?
That's incorrect.
Okay.
Any allocations that have been given to us are just frozen. So we have about a $46,000 balance left from prior year projects that at some point when they unfreeze those allocations, we'll be able to.
We're entitled to
yeah.
that. Okay, thank you. Okay, Lisa.
So, yes, status of our fire study,
Oh, yeah.
before you go.
I have a date on the calendar that just got canceled, but I'm meeting with the fire study group to go over the draft. So it's in its final preparation. We have a draft form. I'll give some feedback on that draft form, and we'll have a final fire study to present to you probably in the next month or two.
Okay, I was trying to remember where we were with it. We selected somebody and they did the study. Is that complete?
Is the
just don't
study
re-
complete?
Yeah.
I would say they're at a draft form. If
When you say draft, excuse me, but you mean they're preparing the report? Is that what you mean?
they've
The study's
prepared a
done?
report,
Okay.
but it's in draft form.
Okay.
They're going to give it to me for feedback.
Mm-hmm.
They might have to go back and do a little bit more work, and then it will be a final report.
So is there some way we can have that report before the budget season for those departments?
I've been pushing them on that. Yeah,
Because those departments are a big chunk of our
I
budget.
knew you'd ask that question. So since you're getting the budget in March, you'll have it before you get the
With
budget,
a little bit of time
Yeah.
to take a peek at it?
Yeah.
All right, great. Thanks, Mark.
like a day before.
A little more. Okay.
45 minutes.
That's plenty of time.
Yeah.
It's not that big a report.
Yeah, as soon as you get out of work, take a read, have a seat.
Absolutely, of course. And I knew that was coming, and I kind of pushed him along a little bit. Any other questions? Any
No,
thoughts?
thank you.
Okay.
No, I'm good.
You all
Thank
got
you.
plowed out okay?
Very
Our
well.
guys did a
Very
remarkable
well.
job. They
Nicely
punched
done.
in at about 10 a.m. and they were done. They went around the clock once, and I think they were done about 4 or 5 or 6 in the following morning. So they had a long day. Thankfully, Friday they got off at work and they did get some sleep before they had to come in Saturday morning and work around the clock. But it was a long endurance on that storm. It just kept kind of coming, and it was blowing quite a bit. So because it was on a weekend, because it was 18 hours, that's a big hole in our overtime highway budget. Of course, we budget for it. We don't want too many more of those storms, so we can handle that
We're done
one.
this year.
We can handle 1 or 2 more like that, and then we get a little tighter. So it's all good.
Okay.
Our guys are, and they are all guys. I checked. I don't want to offend it. Our guys are amazing at what they do, and we get credit from other area towns going, wow, you guys are good, because I just drove through my town and it's not that good. So it's all good.
Great.
Very good.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
With that, we'll move on to the report from the finance director.
Good evening. So, reports were sent out with the packets. However, the largest department, the Board of Ed, had not entered their December transactions. They had a bit of a problem with the computers. So, as a result, I sent you draft reports, and in your green folders, I made copies of the last 2 pages of the expenditure reports, because that's where the Board of Education expenditures are. And then also in your green folders, I included the monthly summary reports. You know, the way that our revenues and expenditures are tracking are more or less on target. I will comment that in the month of December, we made several large cash outlays. We made our annual required defined benefit pension contribution. That was $657. We made another contribution to the health insurance fund, $300,000. We paid our quarterly subsidy to the East Lyme Library. That was $280,000. And then we transferred the funding of the annual CNRE subsidy, which was $235,000. In addition to that, we made our quarterly premium payments for workers' comp and our liability, auto and personal property premiums. We purchased some storm materials. Our police overtime was close to $47,000. We had some vehicle maintenance expenses, and then our I've also highlighted the part-time Flanders Fire, part-time firefighters account for Niantic Fire. On the revenue side, we do have people that come in December and start paying the second half of the real estate taxes. So that we had $5.6 million in December. The Board of Ed tuition payment of $311,000. We received some of our state grants, 1/3 of the Pequot grant, our payment in lieu of taxes for the elderly, for the veterans, and then our building permits were a little over 20,000. Conveyance tax fees were close to 24,000. We did receive, if you recall, we asked for the special appropriation for the streetlight retrofitting funds that we received. So, those are a highlight of, some of the revenues and expenditures for the month. We've already kind of briefly discussed that, the state's cutting back on our ECS. That was a little over 125,000. So looking at revenues that we've received through December, plus doing a projection on, estimates on what we may receive through the end of the fiscal year, at this point, it's looking like we're going to be using 419,000 of the fund balance that we applied to this year's budget. To balance the budget, we applied 675,000. The number increased at the end of December by about 132,000, which is really, the ECS, the cutback on the ECS funding. Because if you remember, at the end of November, it was just under 300,000 that we would be using of the fund balance.
Okay, so is anybody else confused? I'm confused because I thought the $125,000 cut for the ECS, Mark just said the Board of Ed would make up for that.
I'm talking revenues. So in other words, if you look at the big picture, we project our revenue. So we're going to be short that 125,000.
But it's not going to necessarily come from the fund balance if the Board of Ed
doesn't expend 125, right?
Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So they have to not.
They have to not
But
expend
if
it.
they don't, you're saying we're going to be hit for 419,000 on our.
Right. So
If they do spend the 120 for revenue that they don't get, then the 120 is going to affect our fund balance.
it's going to affect the fund balance that we applied to balance this year's budget. So in other words, we applied 675,000 fund balance to balance our budget. The way that revenues are tracking so far fiscal date, we're going to use about 419,000 of that 675.
How does that compare to last year? What we had to use out of the fund balance?
You know what? I don't.
Okay.
I don't have
Don't worry,
that.
I just thought you might know.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
So like all the other, pluses and minuses remained, about in the same area as where we were last month.
So we don't spend what we don't have, it's a wash.
Right.
How are we doing with our health insurance?
It's still a challenge. Through the end of December, we have, I believe, 6, 7, 8, 9 large claims, which are, once we have an individual claim that is at the $62,500 mark, it comes out on a special report. And so we have like 9 of those. And the total paid in claims for those 9 is $1.3 million. And a portion of that is above the stop loss point. So once a claim hits $125,000, we don't pay for that. We buy